first speaker tonight. Jansha Peterson, this fine young man, had a really exciting summer, and he's going to tell us all about it tonight. I think it should be very interesting. So Jansha, do you want to come up and tell us all about your wonderful summer?
Okay, can you guys hear me okay? Yeah. Alright, so my name is Jacob, or Jansha Peterson. I go by both names. I've been a member of the club for just over 3 years now. And this summer I did something a little bit special, and that is I was an astrophysicist. Sort of. More accurately, what I did was I participated in the International Astronomy Summer Internship Program. This was a 3-week internship that was held at the House of Astronomy at the Max Planck Institute for Astronomy in Heidelberg, Germany. I was one of 10 participants from all over the world. I was the only Canadian there. We had quite a few from the US, from the UK, from Germany, and the internship was led by Dr. Marcus Nielbach at the Max Planck Institute. So a little bit about the MPIA. It's located in Heidelberg. It has very close ties to the University of Heidelberg, which is a very old, very prestigious university, and it's a part of the larger Max Planck Institute. I just wanted to mention this. This was a building that I was staying in. You can obviously see what the architecture is supposed to represent. It was a really cool, very modern building, but because it's so curved, it was like we were always walking around the corner, so it was a little bit hard to navigate. But I got it now. So we worked under the mentorship, but not like it wasn't a teacher-student relationship. Our instructor was more of a mentor to us. He pointed us in the right direction, answered any questions that we had. And we learned about and worked with observational data and then compiled all of our results into a paper that I'll be talking about in a little bit. During the internship, we focused on long-period variable stars. We analyzed light curves from about 30 of these stars from the Herschel Space Observatory and from AVSO, the American Association of Variable Star Observers. And we measured in visual, in infrared, and in far infrared from Herschel. We also did some distance estimation of globular clusters using isochrones. This is a method of determining the distance and metallicity and age of globular clusters by matching them to simulated Gersten-Russell diagrams. We also did a few other space-related things that I just wanted to throw in at the end because some of you might find them interesting. So when you're doing science and you're working with information, you need to have the right tools for the job. So the 3 major pieces of software we used were HYPE, which is a program for retrieving and analyzing and graphing data from the Herschel Space Observatory. TopCat, which stands for Tools for Operations on Catalogs and Tables. We use this for a lot of data retrieval and graphing data. I have a mixed relationship with this program. I feel like there were a few things that could have been a little better about it, easier to use. And I spent an embarrassing long amount of time trying to figure out some basic features. And by far the most important and versatile thing that I used was the Python programming language. It's a very high-level, versatile language. It's used a lot in astronomy, in science, in engineering. It has a lot of resources and libraries available for it, for math and science, and for data analysis. And so we use this extensively when we were working with this data. So a little bit about the Herschel Space Telescope, or Herschel Space Observatory. It measures in the far infrared. It was launched in 2009, and for our interests, we were looking at 70, 100, and 160 micron wavelengths. The mission was active until 2013, and it included 3 primary instruments. Those were HiFi, Spire, and PAX. The one that we were interested in was PAX. It stands for Photo Detecting Array Camera and Spectrometer. We were as interested in the spectrometer aspect of it as the camera aspect. It was a very sensitive array of 8 16 by 16 CMOS detectors. It had a field of view of about 1.75 by 3.5 arcminutes, so relatively small. And it was very sensitive to the point that it needed to be cooled to extremely low temperatures in order to operate properly, down to about 3 degrees Kelvin using helium. One of the major issues with that is you can't cool the entire telescope. So the main mirror of the telescope, which was I believe about 3.5 meters, and the rest of the telescope would never get to 3 degrees Kelvin. They were sitting at about 80 to 90. So you have an inherent problem with noise in your observations that comes from the body of the telescope itself. So there are 2 ways you can use to filter out this noise. The first is the slightly slower but simpler option, which is simply moving in a zigzag pattern across the sky to create redundancy and subtract noise that way. The second option that is a little more complex and leads to some strange features in your end observations, but is much more effective, is called the chopping and knotting method. This works by slightly offsetting your field of view of the telescope, usually by a few arcminutes only, and taking multiple observations at these different offsets, and then subtracting those observations, those offsetted observations to reduce noise and effectively remove it. This method is advantageous because you don't need to move the entire telescope when you're doing this. You can use a tilt mirror system, which comes in the form of this little device. This is a really, really precise mirror on a tilting axis that you can use to quickly move the field of view of the telescope. One of the main problems that was encountered with this device, though, was that when you tilt a mirror, and you tilt it very quickly and then stop it very quickly, it doesn't immediately stop. It's going to shake and vibrate a little bit. It's like when you knock your telescope, and when you're trying to observe, or you touch the eyepiece by accident, it's going to take a few seconds for it to settle. And this is going to affect your observations. So it uses a really, really precise system of sensors and highly modulated power to the tilting motors to very quickly dissipate this vibration to the point that it tilts, I believe, about 5 times per second, with virtually no vibration or any interference at all. And when you take an observation that was done using this chopping and knotting method, it looks like this, which is a little bit confusing because we're trying to observe one object and we have 9 there. The only one that we're really interested in is this one in the middle. This is the completely noise-corrected, pixel-interpolated finished observation. Is this the laser point? Yeah. These blue and black and purple things on the top, bottom, left, and right are actually negatives. They're sort of ghost images. They're a byproduct of the subtraction process of these offset observations. Same goes for these red ones, except these are positives. So for these observations, as I mentioned, we focus on long-period variable stars for a few reasons. First of all, they're fairly easy to observe, and there's lots of observations available for them because they have such long periods. Usually these were between 100 and 1,000 days. And we use observations, obviously, from a Visual Space Telescope in using calibration data that was taken using these long-period stars that hadn't really been analyzed or looked at properly before, from what I'm told. So we were kind of excited to see what kind of information we could get from it. And we measured in the Herschel blue and red bands, which are 70 and 160 microns. One thing to note is that Herschel doesn't take measurements in a conventional brightness magnitude system that we are used to in visual astronomy. It takes measurements in flux density, which isn't the same thing. I'll go into the difference in a little bit. And the second source that we used was AVSO. This was a combination of direct visual observations and options from various filters. For those who don't know, AVSO is an organization of amateur astronomers based out of America who observe variable stars and record their observations. And this way you can get lots and lots of data from lots and lots of different observers. A little bit about these filters that we use. They consist of various bands, the 2 most important of which are probably B and V. You can use the B and V band of these filters to generate a B minus V color index, which is an important index of color that you use when you're classifying stars. Basically, all you do is you take an observation in the B visual band, or the B band and the V band, and you subtract your B band value from your V band value. And And that generates a color index that you can use, for example, when making Hertzsprung-Russell diagrams, which they needed to later on. So I mentioned earlier something called flux density. This is not quite the same as magnitude in that it's not a measurement of brightness. It's a measurement of power passing through a surface area per frequency. So it's measured in a very strange unit of watts per square meter per hertz, which is turned into a slightly different non-SI unit called a Jansky, which is an extremely very, very small measurement of 10 to the negative 26 watts. The reason such a small unit is used is because when you're taking observations from these incredibly distant, incredibly dim objects, you're never talking on the order of 1 watt per square meter per hertz. That's a lot of energy to ask of an object so far away. So we use these Jansky units for reference, like the observations we were getting were only on the order of 1 or 2 Janskys. So they're very, very weak signals, which is why the sensor needs to be so sensitive. The magnitude system, which is what all the information from APSO came in, is what we all know in visual astronomy. It's a measurement of luminosity or brightness as we see it from Earth. So I have to do a little bit of math to convert this flux density to magnitude. Depending on the wavelength, this denominator here changes a little bit. Essentially, all this is the base 10 log of your flux density in Janskys divided by, if you're in 70 microns, this number, and if you're in 160 microns, this number. That was just about as complex as the math got for us, luckily. But that was what we needed to do in order to get consistent observations. So these were the 30 stars that we took data from. These are all mostly red giant stars. These are long period variables. They all have periods of about 100 to 1,000 days. So actually quite a long time. And this makes them ideal for us because, well, there's a lot of data available for them. A few of these are an interesting variable star called Myra variable. Most of these are what's called asymptotic giant branch giants. These are stars that are sitting right up here in this part of the Hertzsprung-Russell diagram. After the red giant branch, and they kind of turn off to the left and back down here. And the majority of the stars we looked at were in this part of the diagram. The reason they're called Myra variables is because the first star of their type was Myra, and so that was discovered was Myra, and so they've all been named after that star since then. So enough about all that. What did we actually do? What did our observations look like? Well, they looked something like this. At the top here, you have your visual data. This is from the American Association of Variable Star Observation. It's a very nice looking sinusoidal graph. This is over about, I believe, 1,500 days. And it's a very obvious pattern visible here. But if you look down here at the visual data, there's not much of a pattern really visible. That you can't really see any kind of trend. So this became a bit of a problem for us, and this was probably the biggest issue that we faced during this entire internship, and that was that there isn't that much calibration data available. And the data was not dense enough to be able to see any kind of trend in at least this form of graph. So we needed to make everything a little denser. We needed to compact it so that we could see some kind of trend here. And the way we did this is we generated what's called a phase chart. Essentially what this is we took every period, every oscillation of this star's brightness, and we stacked them on top of each other. So we took the second period and we stacked it on top of the first. And we repeated this process for every period for whom we had data. And we did the same thing for visual packs. And when you end up doing this, you get a graph that looks a little bit like this. This is why I chose this particular star, S Ursa Minoris, as an example, because there's a little bit of a pattern visible here. You can see your normal one period, one phase oscillation here in visual, and then you see the same thing. You can start to see a little bit of a pattern in infrared. But you notice they're not aligned. You have your top trend up here in visual, but then down here, its peak of its wave is up here. So there's a shift happening here. There's a phase shift happening between the visual and the infrared bands of the star. Why? Why is this happening? Well, the best explanation is dust clouds. a dust cloud around a star. Now how can a orbiting cloud of dust cause something so strange, this shift in the visual and infrared bands? And the explanation is these dust clouds, they absorb light. They are opaque. And so when they absorb this energy, they have to re-emit it, but they re-emit it at a lower energy, at a higher wavelength. In this case, your far infrared, which also picks up. So what this looks like to the observer is it looks like that the star, as it gets brighter in the visual band, it actually starts to get dimmer in the infrared band, which leads to this strange looking graph that isn't quite aligned. So we found 5 stars that had this characteristic phase shift. We focused on those when we were looking for these phase shifts and calculating how big these dust clouds might actually be. And this is what we came up with. So you can see here, the phase shift in days of these stars is a lot. It's in excess of a year in some cases, which, if you do the math, ends up with dust clouds of extremely large radii. The way you come up with this is you multiply the phase shift in days by the speed of light and calculate that distance, and that gives you the approximate radius of this dust cloud. The issue is that obviously we weren't working with the most precise data on the planet, so there is quite a large margin of error. In this case, we figured it was about 15%. So in conclusion, for long period variable stars, we have found evidence of dust clouds present around 5 long period variable stars. And we have reason to believe that these dust clouds are causing a phase shift between the visual and infrared light bands of the star due to them absorbing and then re-emitting this light at a lower energy. We also managed to come up with the radius of these dust clouds as well, but using the phase shift. All of our findings we compiled into a paper that we know is going to be published in the European Journal of Physics at some point. I don't have an exact date for you, but I estimate sometime in the next few months. We don't know exactly when it is. Now, when that does come out, I'll send something out on the mailing list in case anybody's interested. But as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, this wasn't the only thing that we did. We also did a little bit of distance estimation of globular clusters using isochrones. The way we did this is we used data from the Gaia data release 2. The data release 2 from Gaia is arguably the most comprehensive database of stars in the galaxy ever compiled. It is about 1.1 billion stars, not all of which are even in the Milky Way. And so if you want a comprehensive, complete list of stars, this is where you go. So we took stars belonging to various globular clusters, and we isolated them by looking at groupings of motion and radial velocity in the star. So we look for a group of stars that's moving in one specific direction, and this way we filter out all of the background and foreground stars that we would normally pick up if we were just looking at the cluster through its position in the sky. So I talked about isochrones a lot. Isochrones are essentially Hertzsprung-Russell diagrams of stellar populations that you have simulated with various properties. So you run simulations of a population of stars at various metallicities and various ages to find a simulated Hertzsprung-Russell diagram of what that population of stars would look like. And then you essentially just do your best to find a match between the Hertzsprung-Russell diagram of your cluster that you've chosen and the simulations that you've created. With this, you can also calculate the metallicity of the star. Metallicity is basically any element in a star that isn't hydrogen or helium. That is known as the metallicity of the star. And it's usually calculated with the ratio of iron to hydrogen in the star, Fe over H. You might have seen this in a few publications. As a general rule, we expect that older stars, for example the ones in globular clusters, which tend to be extremely old, to have lower metallicities because they were formed at a time when these heavy elements, like iron, weren't nearly as common as they are now in the universe, because these are only created in the cores of stars. These stars that formed very early in the universe's lifespan didn't really have many of them, and we expect older stars, or younger stars, to have a much higher metallicity. And as a general rule, we have seen that to be true. This is what an example graph looked like for the cluster 47 These this purple graph here, these purple points, is our simulated isochrone of a cluster of a certain age and metallicity. And all of the gray points are actual points from the star cluster 47 that we observed using Gaia. You can see here that it's pretty much a perfect match. When you see these isochrones, you try and find the one that has the best fit, and then you need to transform your, or translate your Huysman-Russell diagram to fit the graph, and with that you can calculate roughly how far it is. So you can see here, the distance at which it fit the best was about 4,200 parsecs, which is just under 14,000 light years, and as it happens, 47 Tucanae is 4,000 parsecs away, plus minus 350. So this does fit within our what we already know about the star cluster. Again, not really cutting edge science, but it was definitely something that a conclusion that we came to by ourselves as interns. That we had obviously had outside help, but mostly it was our own conclusion here. So I mentioned earlier that we did a few other things. When I was there, for those who are interested in spaceflight, this might be for you. We did a little bit of white light visual observation and H-alpha observation of the star. They had this really nice pressure-tuned Lunt scope. They had at the House of Astronomy, a 106 millimeter quadruplet Takahashi refractor that, I don't know what I was thinking, that I didn't take a picture of. I'm terribly sorry. But they had a lot of very impressive scopes there, because not only is this a scientific institute, this is also a public outreach institute, so they want to have big, flashy telescopes to impress the public with. We also took a little bit of a trip to the Speyer Technology Museum, which is a transportation technology museum in Germany that has all kinds of cars and planes from the early days of transportation, but they have an entire aircraft hangar devoted to spaceflight. And in this aircraft hangar, there were quite a few interesting things that I wanted to just mention quickly, including this. This is a flight-proven descent module from a Soyuz mission that flew from Mir in 1994 and successfully delivered 3 astronauts back home on Soyuz mission TM-19. Okay, that's interesting, but let's get going. These are 2 spacesuits that were worn in training by astronaut Alexei Leonov, who some of you may recognize as the astronaut who completed the first spacewalk for the Soviet Union in 1965. These were suits worn in training by him. These aren't the ones he wore during the spacewalk. I'm sure those are in some vault in Russia somewhere at this point. But this was also pretty cool. But by far the most amazing thing that we saw at Speyer was this. This is not a space shuttle. This is the Russian answer to the space shuttle. This is the Buran orbiter. This one was built in 1984, and it was used to conduct aerodynamics testing for re-entry and for gliding. You'll notice that rather than make this a glider, in typical Soviet fashion, they just strapped 4 jet turbines to it to allow it to extend its range even further. This was actually, there are some people who make the argument that this was a superior alternative to the space shuttle because it could fly unmanned. And the one flight that the Buran did complete was a completely unmanned flight, but it was completely successful. It flew and landed completely by itself. Anyways, I ranted on about the museum long enough. I wanted to do a little conclusion of this presentation. I haven't written any slides for this because I don't know how to script this properly. This was obviously an amazing opportunity for me to do. I'm very grateful that I got to do this. I'm sure there aren't many 16-year-olds out there who have got the opportunity to experience science in an institution, in a university, academic setting the way I have. It definitely has affected the way I'm going to make decisions going into the future in terms of post-secondary education, in terms of what I decide to do. I have a very unique insight that I'm very grateful for. But in the interest of balance, obviously, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. One thing that I feel like is the reason all of us are here is a common, almost childlike fascination with space. I think we all remember the moment when something clicked and we looked through a neighbor's telescope or we looked through our own and we thought, whoa, like, space is really cool. And that fascination is what kind of, it's what drives us to all be here, it's what motivates us to spend ludicrous amounts of money on telescopes. that childlike glee almost in investigating space and in doing research in science, I didn't really feel like it was present at this institution level. And that's probably naive of me to assume that it would be, because I'm well aware that the science of astronomy is very advanced now, and that simply having a passion for space isn't enough anymore. But it kind of took me back to the energy you kind of get, like for example, at the Star Parties or at any other kind of gathering of astronomers. It wasn't really present there. But that's not to say that I didn't enjoy myself immensely when I was doing this, and still, you know, it was a very, very positive experience for me, and I enjoyed every second of it. So, on that slightly morbid conclusion, I'd like to end the presentation here. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll take any questions, I suppose.
Yeah, you mentioned that the discrepancy between the curve for visual variability and infrared variability would be absorption and then re-emission in a dust cloud. But would the variability in the infrared still follow the visual in that the reabsorption would occur quite quickly, or reabsorption and emission would occur quite quickly and in the same variability pattern?
Well, the dust cloud has a very large thickness, and so the light takes a lot of time to travel through it. And so, because of that, this variability would actually occur because it's not one layer, it's a very, very thick.
It's taken a long time to bounce
It takes a
through.
very long time to get through the dust cloud. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sort of a related question to hers now. I know that there are some what they call carbon stars, which may not necessarily have dust clouds. It's thought that they maybe just have carbon accumulation on the surface. You may or may not be able to, and I'm sorry for asking this, but why do they think there's a dust cloud rather than just an accumulation on the surface? Is it because of this delay, or I guess the paper will elaborate on this?
Yeah, part of it is this delay. Carbon stars, like you said, are very carbon rich, and you can see that when you do spectroscopy of the star, and in these stars that isn't really present. So we don't really have reason to believe that these the carbon nature causing that variability. Yeah.
I had a question, follow-up question from hers. What's the time difference between the two peaks on that graph?
So as there's some enormous, it was about 196 days.
Right in the middle. Huh.
So,
What's the
Even on the same slide, so for these stars, I believe you said these are red giants and they're long period variable stars, and so you focused on these 5. Are there other long period variable stars where there is not this delay in between the visible light and long wavelength infrared, because there is no dust cloud in between us and the star?
yeah. So we did do observations on about 30 stars. The reason we focused on those 5 is because we did absorb that shift in phase between the visual and the infrared. And the other ones we either didn't have enough data to see if that shift in phase, or we could see that there definitely wasn't. So, yeah.
One more quick question for you. Given the observation that you had about, I guess you could call it the difference between the childlike wonder or glee, and as a future astrophysicist, what you see as your role in trying to maintain that with the people you're working with? I'm just curious.
That's a good question.
From that airlines.
Come here and get recharged and then take it back.
Well, I think a big part of it is public outreach. There's a lot of institutions working to increase public awareness of space, and I think the more people you have who enter astronomy not because of them being particularly good at maths, although obviously you should be if you want to enter, actually physics, but I think we had more people entering the field because of those reasons, because of their fascination with space. Then that might have proven it. I don't know. That was probably a good answer, but yeah. It's all about awareness. Yeah.
Yeah, the stars generate carbon internally, and it's like it's in a resonance state, not by continuing fusion. So, isn't it possible, since carbon can be created as part of a resonant state between beryllium and carbon, beryllium and helium, isn't it possible that something else is being created in a resonant state that would give the illusion of this?
That could be. I'm not too familiar with what kind of things can be created when you have a cycling fusion cycle like that, but I suppose that would be possible, yeah. Very, very possible. No, I think that's it. So, thank you.
All right, we'll continue on. Thank you, Kasia. That was great. All right, sorry, I gotta get used to my new eyes here. Okay, so we'll start with Sylvia. You want to do it now or after?
Sure, I can go now.
Okay, let's do it now.
Sorry.
I mean, obviously, locations there.
Yep, yeah.
Weird, eh?
Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Sylvia, and I am the Spruce Woods Star Party planner, and I'm just going to give you a report about how the Star Party went, for those of you that didn't make it up there. Oh, thanks. How do you mean?
That's a good question.
So, yeah, just giving you an update, a report on how everything went. So, 60 people made it out to the Star Party this year. So we spent 3 nights out at Spruce Woods Park with our telescopes and with all the astronomy people there. Out of the 3 nights, 2 were cloudy. But really, to have a great Star Party, you just need that one clear night, which we got at the very end. The clouds parted, and we had these glorious Spruce Woods skies that just, blew your minds, with the Milky Way popping out like it does out there, and all of those diffuse objects that you can't see from here, and you can just see naked eye out at Spruce Woods. So that one night was really great. And the other reason why it's good to have a couple of cloudy nights is because we get to hang out. So we get to know each other a little bit more. We get to talk about our equipment, techniques under the skies. We got to have a bonfire, and just got to know each other a little bit better. Also, Jerry, who usually does the sky tour outdoors, he came prepared with a presentation, which we had at the cabin. We have a cabin available at Spruce Woods, so we all got comfortable, brought our favorite snacks and chairs, and just watched the show as Jerry guided us through all the night sky objects. And what was really cool this year is that on Sunday night, when the sky cleared, Jerry actually did the sky tour. And so everything that we had learned, it was like a classroom setting, right? Everything we had learned at the cabin, we got to reinforce under the real stars, and it was just so neat. And so the Star Party started like it usually does, with Jerry on top of a picnic table, in the center of the hospitality tent. And about 10 people always always show up early, so thank you for doing that, because you really need about 8 to 10 people to set up the hospitality time. And then we have registration time with Stanley Runch. Stanley is retiring from registration at Spruce Woods, so we the committee bought eyepiece for Stanley in appreciation for all the work he did over the last 3 years, making the registration and helping everybody. So we're going to miss Stan, but now we have Sam Gisbrecht, who has taken up the position of registrar. So next year, when you register for the third party, you'll be in contact with Sam, and not with Stan. I just took a picture from the north end of the field of the start party field. So here's where everybody, let's see, everybody camps along there, and here's the start party tent. And here's usually where Jerry would do the sky tour, so we have a nice view of the south skies. We also had a couple of really cool presentations at the Interpretive Center with Ward College, who gave us some really good information about all kinds of issues that you can run into with telescope that leave so many frustrated, right? He also gave us some really good information on new software and programs that are out there, so it was really good to hear all of this. We had Dr. Samar Safi Harb as well, who presented on the heavy elements and their origin, and how neutron stars that collide have now opened up this whole new window into the study of these heavy elements. And then at the Observing Circle, it was open all weekend, so people could come and do sketching or observing, and we had a solar telescope going, hydrogen alpha, and the sun actually had this really nice prominence so that we could all really enjoy that. I don't know who this is, but this is the cabin that we go to, and we all got nice and comfortable with our snacks and drinks and just waited for the show to start. And here's the sky tour. So the following night when the sky is cleared, Jerry did his sky tour, and you can see he's pointing with his 2 lasers. Here he was pointing to the center of the Milky Way galaxy and showing us in which direction we are traveling through it. So that was so cool to see all of this stuff in action under the stars. And then we had lots of impromptu gatherings. So, you know, you walk around and everybody is so friendly, and you talk and you share food and you share your techniques and all kinds of astronomy stuff. Now, isn't this a nice looking bunch? But if you look closely, not everyone. Some people just don't cooperate. You gotta look closely. That's what happens. I think every place where I have this view is like that. And then we had the sky tour. So the sky tour is where, you know, all the participants set up their equipment, and actually Sam Giesbrecht guided us through the whole field, showing us everyone's setup, which was so cool. So here is Sheila actually presenting on her astronomy gear and showing us, you know, how she sets up for the night and makes all those beautiful pictures that we see on the email list. And here is Sam now showing us this cool classic Tasco refractor. It was so neat too, because he showed us, you know, how it came with the original box and everything. It was from the 1950s or something. It was really cool to see. And here's Paul Parody with his refractor and all kinds of gadgets that he uses. And this is Paul Moffat. He has SCT here. And he showed us, you know, how he sets up for the night. He built his own table with all of these walls here to hang out things and be comfortable for the night of observing. And here is Michelle Paquette showing us her telescope. And she built this thing. She built it out of, I think it's like a little telephone table.
I made the table.
A what?
I made the table too.
And okay, so she made the table. And added these little legs here, which are called Sputnik legs, right?
No, you called them
No, she did. I'm sure she did. Look at how smart that is. So if we don't have this telescope tour, we don't get to see all these cool things that people make. It was so many stuff. Julian showing us, how he takes pictures of the night sky with his astronomy gear. And Deljan showing us yet another SCT that he's got and his APX mount. And Michelle with her Mac Cass, right?
Yes.
Yes. Michelle Royce. I was going to call her, can I call you Michelle Mac Cass? Because I don't remember your last name. I remember your telescope. Oh, okay, and here's Daryl. I don't know if Daryl is here tonight. I think that was his first star party ever, so he brought his refractor and all his astronomy cameras, and I think he was directing everything from his camera, so he didn't even have to be outside. And Cliff, is Cliff here? He's not here. Oh, okay, well, Cliff was so amazing. He had a lineup at his telescope the night that it cleared, and the views that we got through there were so cool. Such memorable views, really, of the Veil Nebula. All of these objects just look so nice on this telescope. And here we have Andrew with his 2 8-inch dogs. He actually won one of them last year at the star party. And I think he was saying something about building a binocular set out of these 2. I don't know if you started that already. Not yet? Okay. Report back when you do. And then, when the moon was setting, this very thin moon, from the observing circle, Sheila had shared these pictures on the email list, and I thought, hey, I did a sketch of this as well. So here's Sheila's beautiful picture of the moon with these trees, and I had sketched the trees during the day, and then when the moon came, I put the moon in, and then at night, I plunked in the stars. So it's a really long exposure on this one. But I thought, oh, cool, we both have the same view of both things. And here's all the pictures that Sheila took that she shared on the email list. And by the way, if you are not on this email list, let us know. We can help you on how to get on it. I know some people say, well, I didn't know that it was there. So if you want to get on this list and be in the loop, let us know. Julian? Is Julian here tonight?
Yes.
Yeah? Oh, hi, Julian. Okay, Julian took these pictures at Spruce Woods as well. Look at, he got some aurora with some curtain happening here, and the Milky Way standing out so much with Jupiter, and so cool. Nice job. And then John took this picture of Jupiter, and I'm so glad he did, because the moons of Jupiter had such a peculiar orientation on that night. Yeah, like you don't see them often like this, so I'm so glad he shared that picture, so now we can have it for the memory. Is John here? He's not here today. And then we have the group photo. And every year, Brian Statch, also known as Astro Diablo, attends the star party, but this year he wasn't there, so all the pictures had to be taken by me. So I forgot to take a lot of pictures. Like, for example, during the banquet, we had some really cool prizes, and I didn't take pictures of that. But we had Richard Conrad and his spouse won an 8-inch Skywatcher Dobsonian telescope. So congratulations to them. And then Sheila Wisher, she won the Mead Go-To refractor, which at the end, she ended up donating it to these 2 kids that sat with us during the banquet, and they were so excited. They're saying, when are you guys going to be at the observatory? Because they want to bring this new little telescope. So that was so kind of Sheila. Thank you for doing that. And Jesse's here too. He won the Ioptron. It's a mount tracker for astrophotography, so congratulations. We got it from Johnny Sidelines. And then Damon won the tabletop little Dobsonian, so congratulations to Damon, and thank you to Darren Hennig for obtaining that from All-Star.
Yeah.
All-Star Telescope donated it, so thank you to them as well. Thanks for obtaining that. And that's another thing. Darren Hennig had a clinic at the hospitality tent where he cleaned up all kinds of telescopes, binoculars.
Mostly binoculars, eyepieces.
Oh, yeah?
And camera lenses.
Yeah. I was going to take mine too, but I forgot them in the rain, so I figured, oh, now they're really clean. I should really check out. I thought, oh, I could see them from my camera. I brought And so there you have it. That was the end of the start party, another successful event. And I just wanted to let you know that we have another spot available for volunteer. If you want to come and see me today, all that we need is somebody to schedule the banquet and the Sunday breakfast, which is so easy to do. You basically just call it in and reserve the date and ask them for, this many plates or whatever. And if you wanted to do something of your own and just change the whole thing completely, you can totally do that too. So hopefully somebody comes to see me tonight and take on that role. So thanks everybody. I hope to see many of you next year.
All right, thank you, Sylvia. Sorry I couldn't be there. I was getting eye surgery done just a few days before the event.
Priorities, Brian.
Oops. All right. Okay, we'll get started. My name is Brian Satch. I'm the president for the next year and a half, roughly. I'm also the director of Glenley Observatory. I'll explain a little bit more about that later. So, do we have any new members here? Just one. Okay. Welcome. Okay. So we'll get started. This is what we have in lineup. It's going to be a nice one. I see Gord here. Gord. All right, okay, sorry. Okay, just to make sure I didn't see you. All right, okay, we'll get started. Okay, so a couple announcements. U of M has an open house at the end of every month, the last Wednesday. You went to the website, it says the 26th, it's actually the 25th. So it starts at 7. I'm going to be there this time because I'm done with my eye surgery, everything's healed, everything's working well. And I'll have some outreach material to give out. And of course, weather permitting, we'll have some observing done with the LX200, but it's a 16-inch telescope, so looking forward to that, finally. Okay, Old Comic March is starting up again this year, so September 19th, was it? So they'll teach you a little bit about the constellation. So, and after that, weather permitting, of course, we have some telescopes lined up. If you are a RSA member, if you bring it, your fee will be waived, so I'm planning on to be there too again, so I'm all healed, so I'm happy to be back to normal again. Okay, so that'll be interesting. What else? Since Sylvia mentioned about it, this is the list. So if you are a member, this is the website. So just log in. So you have to fill in the forms, create your password, and then you have to wait to get approval. Then you can actually be on the RSC list that Sylvia mentioned. And it's quite useful. You can hear what everyone else has to say. You can see all the pictures that everyone's going to be posting. And of course, got any questions, please post it, and someone will be able to answer you. All right, moving on, because I have... Okay, Explore the Universe. Dennis is here. So this is a nice little program, 55 objects. You're going to have to sketch, roughly. You don't have to worry about the sketching part of it. It's more for your benefit. It's more for you to get familiar with the 55 objects you have to sketch, which I think includes the moon. I've never attempted this before. I'm busy with other things. But anyways, if you want to contact Dennis, Dennis is here. Right? We're right there. Okay. All right. So at the end of the meeting or during the break, approach him and he'll get you started. Okay. Now, for the last week, we've been bouncing around. We have about, what, 3 people? Is that right, Dennis? Is that it was 3?
That is correct.
That is correct. Okay. There was a lot of emails going around saying who completed Explore the Universe. So congratulations on these people. Are they here? Any of them? Oh, great. Okay. So it's also true, I didn't add this, but it's exploring the universe, observing, and of course you have to log everything that you observe. That's where your sketching comes into play. And there's a form you have to fill out and all this. And Dennis will approve it, and once it gets approved, it gets submitted to the RASC National, and then they'll give you a certificate. So congratulations on those people.
Yay!
Anyways, telescope loan. So we got this. Abdul's here. So if you want to approach him at the break, we have a number of telescopes out for loan. I don't know how many's out, but he can get you started, put you on a list, on a waiting list if he has to. So anyways, of course, you have to be a member to, and it's free for 1 month. So anyways, go see him. We've got a number of telescopes, and this is what we have for telescopes. I think there's more on its way. It's growing. I have a few telescopes, and eventually we'll have more telescopes to the list. But one thing that got donated last time, Johnny's not here, he donated a metal detector. Because the last meeting, Ralph and Stan did a presentation on meteorite hunting, so Johnny donated a metal detector. So once I get that cleared up, and once I get familiar with it, I'll be teaching other people, so we'll add it to the telescope loan program. So if you want to go out hunt meteorites, please do. But once we'll add it to the list, once I go through it, I have to learn how everything works and give you a little meteorite to actually hear what the sound's like. So, but anyways, we'll add it to our telescope listing. Okay, Langley Observatory. That's me, I'm the director. So, and I actually cut some keys this time. So I got a lot of keys, so if you want to get a warm room key from me, please do. It'd be $10 deposit. And if you do return the key, I'll give you $10 back. So we have several telescopes, especially the LX200. It's a 12-inch. It's a go-to telescope. But if we do have the member site, which is going to be next week, I'll explain a little bit more about that later. I'll show you how to attach it to your laptop. And you can use your laptop to control the LX200. And of course, we have other telescopes for the people. We do have a 14-inch job right here. I'm just fixing the wheels right now, and then we'll have that up and running on member site. And this is what Langley kind of observe looks like for those people who haven't been there. It's fully functional. This is the LX200. This is supposed to be a guide scope that I'm working on right now. Of course, we do have a microwave oven, coffee maker. These are new controls that was put in by Brian Greenberg a couple years back. So the goal is this control here has another set of controls in the warm room. So you can control this whole setup from the warm room during the wintertime if you want to. And I'll show you how that is done at the members' night. Okay, like I said, members' night, it's going to happen on next Saturday. It's a full moon this weekend, so I decided, well, let's move on to the next weekend. So September the 21st is when we're going to have members' night. And hope everything, of course, weather permitting, and I'll show you exactly how the LX200 works. And hopefully these guys are going to cooperate with us. Okay, the mentor program. That is Darren taking lead on that. I help him out, and we have and Bill too.
And Abdul too.
And Abdul now? Okay. So we'll add them to the list. Okay. So if you want to come see us during the break, we'll get you on the mentor program, and we'll show you some of the programs that we have lined up. For example, we have this. I'll be hosting mostly the DSR camera, how to use the DSR, how to take wise objects, wide field photography, and I'll get familiar with the DSR camera. I have two that I have, and I'll show you how they work, or I'll show you how to work your camera. Because a lot of people bring their own cameras and they're not too familiar with it. And I'll show you everything else that needs to go. What else do we have? Okay, so this is the end. These are the people who are on the council members. Most of us are wearing these. I did bring it this time. So, who are the council members right now? You want to just raise your hand to let the members know who you are? So, you got any questions, any concerns, anything like that? Approach these guys, and we'll be happy to help you out. Okay, so moving on, we have Darren for What's Up.
I'll make sure I don't yell and listen to feedback like the last time. apologize in this case because I was traveling last week and I kind of filled in for Jay last minute on this one. So I'm going to do a revised version of the one I had to truncate last week because I know Dennis had to do his green laser pointer talk, and that did take up a little bit more time than we thought. But thank you for doing that, Dennis. That was great. Just before I get into this too, I just wanted to mention, as Brian had alluded to earlier about the RASC Mentor Program, we're starting to see a lot of people making some really good progress. And again, congratulations to those of you that have the mentorship program, the Explore the Universe already under your belt, like yourself, Robin, there. That's a great achievement, and it's really nice to see the enthusiasm out in the field when we're doing these events. So hopefully we can continue that as we go forward. All right, so let me start. Whoops, that's the laser. I always do that. So basically, after the Star Party, I mean, we had a fantastic time at the Star Party. I was out as well. And it was my first one first time attending that one. And it was just amazing when the skies did really clear up how much you can actually see. So, you know, if you're looking towards the south right now, we have now Saturn and the Teapot are really kind of starting to set a little earlier. So if you're going to get into your like southern Milky Way, you almost have to do it right at dusk. Unfortunately, you're probably going to start losing windows as we get more into the end of the month. Even from a darker site, it's starting to set a lot quicker. But the nice thing is this is just sort of just a quick overview of the southern sky here. I mean, the Andromeda Galaxy is kind of getting close to due south. We have Uranus and Neptune, of course, for those of you that want to try and pick that up with either binoculars or a telescope. And last weekend, I actually hosted a members observing session out at Birdsell Park. We have quite a few of those now. And it was actually quite a nice sight for those of you that attended. Robin had his scope on it as well, and there was a really nice contrast. And so did Michelle, really nice color contrast between this one of the brighter stars. I think it was Phi, Aquarius, I believe, and Neptune. So you had this little pale blue dot against a brighter, significantly brighter, sort of an orange-yellow star. It was quite pretty. Anyway, before I get into a lot of the VSO stuff, just a reminder for the moon phases, for those of you that, like we have a full moon tonight, obviously, as Brian mentioned. Next week it's going to be third quarter, which is really nice because it won't be rising until quite a bit later. So for those of you that want to do a lot more dark sky observing, that's really the best time to do it. However, those of you who do enjoy the moon, and I'm sure a lot of you do, this is also a good time to start seeing the sort of the eastern side of the moon as it starts to develop along the terminator. You know, you can start following the contours and changes in shadings, especially on the, let me just make sure I put the right button, along this side as we start seeing, you know, moving from full. And of course the new moon's on the 28th, so those of you that are into astrophotography, that's usually when you'll do a lot of your best work, I'm sure. I mentioned this last time, but I just wanted to do this again. I had, like I said, I had a bit of a truncated presentation last time. This is, I've got a link for this near the end of the talk here, but this is a really neat program because they go through the great detail. This is from NASA, one of the NASA sites, and it's really neat because they actually have a very, very high resolution, zoomable view of the moon for those of you that love the moon, and along the terminator, it's really neat. You can get, for those of you that are trying to learn the moon, it's a great way. It'll change periodically throughout the moon's orbit, and you can actually get to learn some of the finer details. This is just a zoomed-in version, and you can see the graphics are very impressive, and it's a great way, like I say, to orient yourself on looking at lunar features for those of you that are interested. I also, I've talked about this a couple of times before. I've got an example that I brought for the break for those that are interested in looking at it. Astronomy Now website actually has a couple of really nice, they're about 23 inches square. One is a map of the moon, another one's a planisphere. For about 50 north, which is really nice. They're from the UK, but the moon map is particularly nice, and it's quite detailed. It would be a great thing to roll out on a table if you're trying to learn, either even from your backyard, or if you do go to another star party or observing event. You can laminate it pretty easily. We'll go over to the sun now, and unfortunately right now there's not a lot happening in white light. I know Sheila had a really nice view of it at the star party, where we saw some really nice prominences and stuff. There was even some pretty good H-alpha disk views as well, but unfortunately we're still kind of in the solar minimum, so we'll see small little, you know, pores and sometimes very small dot formations showing up in white light, but they're few and far between right now. I'm hoping that'll change. I'd like to at least have one or two, and we have the Mercury transit in another 2 months from now, because that would be really neat, just to be able to assist people to focus their cameras and telescopes, for one thing. Not only that, it's always nicer to see something as it's going by. Otherwise, you just have the planet itself. It's kind of boring. I mentioned this before as well, helioviewer.org. This is a great way if you want to customize a view to see what's going on in the sun. And they also have different wavelengths that you can do, and you can actually stack layers along the side here. You can set it up for your own location, and you can even actually copy pictures and share them with friends. So if you want to, you have somebody, let's say in another area somewhere, and you want to let them know, hey, you know what, there's some activity going on right now. Take a look, you can show them what's going on. So you can see here this has the wavelengths and so on, and it tells you quite a bit of things. But it's really neat, it's worth just playing around with. Very, very nice website. The images are spectacular. I forgot to remove that one. That was from my slide last time. Fortunately, right now, Mars is pretty much too close to the sun to really be of use right now. As we get to the later part of the month and into early October, it'll start to move far enough away in elongation where it'll start being a morning object. So you can start watching for that. I know I was talking to Davidian earlier. When is it? Is it the 26th in October?
26th of October, I think.
Yeah, there's going to be a really, I know that's a little ways away, it'll probably be next month. But it should be a really nice crescent moon, like almost new moon, but a very thin crescent with Mars. So that would be a nice, not only photographic op, but also binocular opportunity as well. This is basically the layout of the planets right now. Mercury and Venus, I'll mention this in a moment, but right now they are possible to see in binoculars or a small telescope with some care. Jupiter is starting to set now near just a little after dusk. It starts to get fairly low. So grab it while you can, because it'll start to set a little quicker, and then it'll be more of a dusk object. Saturn's in fine form in Sagittarius, just a little bit to the southwest now. And it's still fairly bright and fairly large. And then we have, as I mentioned earlier, Neptune and Uranus are actually in really good shape. And I'll show you how to find those in a few minutes here. This is one that I just took off the stellarium this afternoon. I did get to see Venus. You have to be very careful with this type of observation. The elongation here is about 8 degrees here, so this is very close to the sun. The way I do it is when we have an eastern elongation like this, I actually wait till the sun goes past. I've got a southern-facing view, and I wait till it goes past the corner of my building, and then I'll use my binoculars on a tripod mount. But you could still do it handheld as well, or in a reclining chair. Just make sure you're in the shade. Make sure that you're not going to accidentally look at the sun at any time during that. And then you should be able to pan around, and you should be able to see it, especially Venus, because it's very bright. This event here right now, these two are very, very close. Mercury's just a little below -1 magnitude. This, I would think the next 2 or 3 days might give a good opportunity to see this during the daytime. So I just wanted to mention that. But again, use caution, and if you're not sure, maybe don't try, because I think you can have somebody injure themselves. Like I say, you have to make sure the sun is blocked away from you. Uranus and Neptune. We have Uranus here. It's very easy to see. Last week, as I mentioned, we were having a lot of fun looking at various planets and other things with our group out at Birds Hill. And this is the easiest way to find Uranus, and it's a binocular object as well. For those of you that are familiar already with looking for M31, all you would do is just go almost straight down to Chertan here and Mesothian. This sort of forms like a hockey stick shape, kind of a sideways hockey stick. And you just take the second brightest star there and just keep going down in the same line, and you can find Uranus. It's a very prominent bluish looking object, and it looks slightly non-stellar. It's about 6th magnitude, and in binoculars it's very easy to see. Typically what we were finding last weekend is around, I think it was around 11 o'clock or so, or just past that. No, it was almost midnight. But Uranus was about halfway between Aries, as it was above the horizon, and the horizon, so it made it really easy to find. And I think there was quite a number of people that knocked that off their list. It's kind of cool. Okay, hang on a sec here. So Neptune is very easy to find as well. For those of you that can recognize the square of Pegasus here, as it starts to, it's becoming very prominent now towards the southeast, almost due south. And all you do is you just follow these 2 bright stars here, Markham and Shea, and you just keep following down, and it's right in this region here. have binoculars, it's much easier to find it with binoculars first. Once you kind of have an idea, then you should be able to zoom it in on a telescope. That's what we did last weekend as well. It was really fun. All right, for bright asteroids, I'm only going to, for bright asteroids, this is sort of what's going on right now. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail on the asteroids part of it, but Vesta and Eunomia are probably our two best targets right now. Ceres is starting to set and get too low to the horizon right now at this time of year, so it's going to be a little tougher to grab. I just have a little finder chart here that I should have updated. I apologize for this. As I say, I kind of ended up volunteering for this one last minute, and I had meetings all week, so I didn't get a chance to update this. But this is where it'll be in 1st of November, and this is where it was a month ago. So it's about right in here somewhere now. So again, this is in Aries, and you can see also this is just you have a Mencar here. So for those of you that can look at a sky chart, you can find out where Mencar is, and you just go almost a 45-degree angle up, and you'll start to see this little thing. The idea here is sketching really helps, and I know Sylvia is talking a lot about sketching as well. If you do a star field like that and you sketch it, you make a note of where the positions of everything is, and then you look at the same view again a couple of nights later, you should see something move, and that'll definitely be the asteroid. So that's a good way to do that kind of thing. Eunomia this was actually would have been much more fun, and we had a couple of nights in succession to do because this thing was really zinging through in August and in early September. It's starting to slow down now. It'll end up being, it'll actually end up reversing back around. We'll start seeing it almost coming to a dead stop right near the end of the month. So for those of you that are interested, I'll make sure that I'll talk to Jay if he's doing it next time, and we'll have a more detailed chart for you. But right now it's in Aquarius, and that's going to be a lot of fun. I'm sorry that I don't have a better diagram today. I just ran out of time. One comet, though, that's kind of weird. Has anybody seen this comet? Those of you that have larger instruments? Anybody had any luck either at the Star Party trying to bag Africana? Anybody see it at all? No? I didn't either, so I was trying my best. Right now, actually just right around the Star Party, it was really kind of just above Merfolk, and it was actually quite neat to try and look at this region, but there were so many stars, it was a toughie, and it's starting to move very, very quickly now. This, supposedly, it was supposed to reach 6 magnitude after perihelion, but I've seen magnitude estimates, 11th mag all the way up to 6, and I don't know what it's doing. But anyway, this is the path that it's going to follow, and it's going to go mostly through the Pegasus region in the southern part of Andromeda here over the next few weeks. So we're kind of in this range right here, right? So like I say, it's going to swing right through, and there's quite a few stars in this field that you can use as guideposts as well. And it might be worth just taking a peek with binoculars here. If it does get a certain outburst or something, it might be a lot of fun. Or those of you that have cameras can follow it too. All right, I'll make this a little quicker on the deep sky stuff. For those of you that went to the Star Party, I mean, I think I kind of joked about it last month when we did this. There's lots of stuff to see, right? And there still is. This was sort of the southern Milky Way view, kind of at closer to 11 o'clock or so, or 10:30 a month ago. Now we're starting to see all of these kind of objects moving over to the west now, and they're starting to set. So the really southern Milky Way stuff might be almost out of our access right now. Although there's lots of stuff in the northern parts of what we call the teapot scheme that are still visible, and even the small Sagittarius stars out all throughout here. If you go to a dark enough area, you should be able to see a lot of these things. And they're scattered all the way through here. And all you have to do is even just take a wide field finder scope, and it's amazing. And Jerry did such a great job. Thanks again for that, Jerry. That was an awesome tour that you did. I did want to mention here, as you're going through the Milky Way, there's so many other objects as well, like a lot of star clusters in this whole region as well. And all you have to do is just pan back and forth along the Milky Way, for the Milky Way, and they're just all over the place. So from a reasonably dark site, you can have a lot of fun, either with binoculars or one of your telescopes. There is one particular object that I liked when I was at SWSP. I know Jerry's favorite, I think, was M54, but I really like M71 too. It's kind of an enigma because it's actually a glob. They redefined it, I think, in the late 70s, if I recall. But it almost looks like kind of a cross between an open cluster, like a really tight condensed open cluster, or a loosely compacted glob. Really a weird thing. But I spent probably about 10 or 15 minutes on that with my 25 by 100s when I was at SWSP, and it's even worth a look if you go either to Glenlee next weekend or one of the events at Birds Hill. It's really quite a neat object to look at. So definitely that one I'd recommend. For those of you that are also looking for other things in the region here, this is the constellation Sagitta. We have, this is Alberio here, which is at the head of Cygnus. That's that famous double star with the blue and gold. And then of course we've got the coat hanger here. So it's very easy with binoculars. You just put the coat hanger just to the southern part of your binoculars and slide over and you're there. So it'll be very easy to find it if you're looking for it. Then of course we have the infamous Dumbbell Nebula as well, which is a very, very good, nice, bright, actually one of the brightest, if not the brightest, I think, nebula that you can see of its type, being a planetary, and it's really quite prominent as well. Moving forward here, don't forget about Ursa Major. It's not gone yet. I actually had a lot of fun hanging around this whole region early before things got too dark, myself with my big binos. And those of you that have 10 by 50s or even 15 by 70 binos frames these galaxies really nicely, especially Bode's Nebula. And it's very, to find them, it's very easy. You just kind of take the diagonal across the dish and go just a little bit past and you're there. And even though they're lower in the northern sky right now, they will start to come out in the early fall, so they're kind of worth watching. So I really recommend that. Don't forget as well that up overhead we still have like Vega, Deneb, and Altair is the summer triangle. It's now starting to go overhead right at getting close to dusk, and then it's starting to move to the southwest, but there's lots of stuff. Don't forget Hercules. I mean, for those of you that haven't looked at or haven't gone there in a while, these two globs are beautiful to look at as well. They're always worth a look. They're very easy to find, and even with modest equipment, you can have a lot of fun there. One star that Yasha mentioned, T-Lyra, I was glad it was on the list actually. It's one of my favorites. This is one of the reddest stars in at least the northern hemisphere, and one of the brightest, reddest ones as well. Very easy to find. This is the constant. This is Vega here. This is the double-double. And so if you go from Zeta 1 to, if you kind of draw an imaginary line through Vega and this, you almost mirror it, and you can find this T-Lyra star. It's really nice in binoculars as well, as long as they're mounted or you have a comfortable reclining chair. This is the view that you'd see in like a 15 or 16 by 70 type. You can just put Vega to the edge of field, and it should be right close to the middle of the field of view. It looks like there's a little deep red hole in space, 7.5 magnitude. I like to use it as an estimate for transparency sometime when it's presenting itself. It's just sort of eerie, it just sort of hangs there. So it's worth a look because it's a little different than what most people are used to looking for. And I definitely recommend if you haven't looked at it, it's a lot of fun. There's also some other red stars in this region too, but that's the reddest of the bunch there. For those that like other areas of the sky to look for red stars, has anybody not seen the Garnet Star before? Or can you see this? It's actually very easy to find. It's a lot brighter than T-Lyra. You basically just, this is the head of, or I guess the tail of the Swan Deneb, part of the triangle, right? The summer triangle. You just project past and just keep going. And actually, even if you drew an imaginary line between Laramie and Deneb, from a darker site, you should be able to see this fairly easily. You can actually, or even let's say Zeta C5 and up, it's about halfway and just a notch off this line, headed towards the south. And it stands out very prominently. It's a very orange-red star, very beautiful to look at. So those of you like colorful stars, that's a nice one to see as well. And of course, we have the Milky Way, and we've got all sorts of stuff through here. You've got the Crescent Nebula. North American Nebula does present itself when you go to a dark enough site. SWSQ is excellent for that because, I mean, you could see it naked eye without any trying. The Eastern Veil and the Veil is all in this region here. So basically, where you've got the head here, this is Alberio, that double star I was talking about. And this is the tail of the Swan Deneb, which is part of the summer triangle, right? If we go from Altair to Vega to Deneb and back. If you follow along I guess you could call it the southern wing here, just near where it bends, these stars are very easy to see from a reasonably dark site. You can just train your binocular or camera or telescope in there and you'll start to see hints of the veil, very pretty. And of course we have the dumbbell right here. The easiest way I find the dumbbell, and I know other people have different techniques for it, when you look at Cygnus high up in the sky, it looks like a cross. They also call it the Northern Cross, the main body of the Swan. And it's basically almost the same distance from the first bright star on the, I guess, the left side when it's sitting near overhead of the Swan to Alberio here. So you can it's almost the same distance between here and here. And they're not quite parallel, but almost. If you're looking for it with binoculars, it's very easy to find that way. Or even a wider field finder scope on your Dob or other telescope. Even a 6 by 30 will show it very easily. Yeah, so this is the North American nebula I spoke about earlier, and of course this whole region is just a lot of fun to go through. There's just countless clusters in here, M39, and all these clusters in here are just beautiful to look at, binoculars or telescopes. You'll definitely have no trouble there. This is that M71 I was talking about. They also call it the angelfish cluster as well. It's kind of like a hybrid, like I said. It's very, very pretty to look at. Now, one nice thing about this time of year is Andromeda is starting to show very, very well. And we had a lot of fun looking at Andromeda at Birds Hill last weekend, and even at the Star Party almost 2 weeks ago. It's coming up very nice in the northeastern sky now. It's got quite a high elevation, in the 50, 60 degree range, around midnight. And don't forget M33 as well, because the easiest way to find Andromeda, for those of you that are not used to doing a lot of star hopping, you have the W of Cassiopeia here. So this lower portion of the W, I use it as sort of a guidepost. You just go, actually the easiest way is to take, imagine an arrow here on the western side the eastern side of Cassiopeia. It kind of points already, and then you use these two stars, Mu and Merak here to point to Andromeda. A lot of fun. Anyway, and then all you have to do if you want to go down to M33, the triangular galaxy, it's much dimmer. It's much more a lower surface brightness object. Is you basically just go the opposite direction a little further, and there you are. I'm not going to go into too much more on this, other than to mention that now we're starting to see Taurus come up in the early morning hours, and the Pleiades are starting to show up as well. Beautiful object to look at in the evening. These are the links to some interesting sites here for those of you who want to just take a quick look. I posted this last time, but again, there's some really good information on some of these, especially for those who are interested in trying to do some imaging of asteroids. I'd be happy to help you out on that. And other than that, please keep looking up, and thank you very much.
All right, we move on. We'll be running a bit late, but we'll continue on. Michelle?
Test. Sounds good. Okay. So, if you remember some time back, I gave what's up with the Event Horizon telescope, and that was just a small snippet of many things of, what's new. And I had a lot of people corner me at the whiteboard, and a lot of discussion went on. And later, the University of Manitoba had their open house, and so I'm recycling this talk, and I actually spent some time trying to understand it more. So this is what I understand. It's actually quite quite complicated to think about. The concepts are simple, but it's hard to put them all together. So this here is actually a computer simulation of what would be seen with an extremely high resolution telescope. It's a simulation. But that's from a movie that bombed. I didn't like it. So this, basically there's a black hole at the center of M87, and you can see this jet here. So this is a picture, it's in Virgo, and it's 54 million light years away, so it means that this is light that came to us from 54 million years ago. And this was announced on April 10th at 9 a.m. Eastern. So, basically, the question is, what is a black hole? So, according to Einstein's theory of general relativity, oh wait, what's general relativity? So this is recycled from another talk that I gave about a year ago. So these are just a couple of slides to explain Einstein's theory of gravity. And basically mass of an object deforms space-time. So that's represented by this rubber sheet, and you have to, like, say, a bowling ball in the middle, it deforms the sheet. And if you take a bearing and you push it in here, it'll actually fly around in a circle or escape or collide into the middle. And you can find this nice YouTube video where they're actually doing this. It's like a 10-minute video. It's actually kind of fun to watch because he has a bowling ball and a couple puts in several planets and so forth. Really, you should be picturing this in higher dimensions. So it's kind of deformed in 3 dimensions, not 2, if you can wrap your head around that. So basically, this is just a depiction of Einstein's theory of general relativity. It has an E equals mc squared field in that the energy density is equal to this deformation of space-time geometry. It actually has that kind of parallel. And of course, the most famous test of Einstein's theory of general relativity was the bending of light around a star. So what they had done in 1919, the editing expedition, they basically first they mapped out all the stars in this region, the Hayek stars, and then they knew when they were going to have an eclipse that the sun, that this star would be behind the sun at the time, and if they see it, then they know that they have done a test of Einstein's theory of general relativity. And so when you look at this, you see the light comes to your eye like this, but it looks like it's outside the star. Okay, so then you have what's known as gravitational lensing. So you can imagine that you're standing here, and there's this really massive object, and then there's an object emitting light behind it, and it gets bent around, and what you see is that the light appears to come from here and here. So this is an example of an Einstein ring where something's perfectly aligned behind it, and this is a smiling. You can see the light distortion here, and this is a complex cluster of things, so you get this image. Okay, so a black hole then is something extremely, it's so massive that at some point light can't even escape, it goes straight into it. So you can imagine the light sort of going around like this. So there's a little diagram here, and as you get closer and closer, it could get into a perfect circle. So if you were standing there, you'd see the back of your head. That is defined as the event horizon, and then the singularity is at the bottom. So that's the event horizon. So what's the big deal? Well, this is yet another test of Einstein's theory of general relativity. I've just put a short list of things here off the top of my head. The bending of light around stars at an expedition, the precession of Mercury's orbit, regular Newtonian gravity you can't do it, you need to use general relativity. Time dilation, frame dragging, gravitational lensing, and then the gravitational waves from LIGO, more recent experiment, and then black hole event horizon. So this was observed by the Event Horizon Telescope, and the theory predicts a certain shape to its shadow. So really, you're kind of looking at the shadow of the black hole, and confirmation by theoretical modeling and observations. So how did they do that? This is basically the Event Horizon Telescope is a network of radio telescopes in which they're adding more and more. And basically it makes an effective aperture of the size of our Earth. Now, the thing about this is that, yeah, okay, it looks simple, but it's not. It's really using the most advanced stuff we know about telescopes, because basically there's radio waves hitting each of these telescopes, and you have to know the exact time they came, the exact angle, and the phase, and everything. So you have to record all that information, and then reconstruct the image. And it's so much information, it's on the order of petabytes. We don't even have petabyte USB keys right now. So it's a petabyte is 1,000 terabytes. So it's of that order. And what that means is you can't even put it over the internet. You have to fly it physically to a data center. And in South Pole, you only have access about maybe 4 or 6 months out of the year. And then they have to process all this, and it takes several years, and they've had several independent teams doing it to make sure they don't make any mistakes. And so you get this simulation, but the Event Horizon Telescope has bad eyesight, so it kind of looks like this, like you have a building here, it's blurred. So your simulation has to be blurred to see if it matches the view of the telescope. But it's not really that bad eyesight. I can do an example here. Here's a composite image of M87 region, and it's a red, basically red for infrared, optical, and then radio in blue. And if we zoom in on a Hubble Space Telescope view, this is what we see. Use the Event Horizon Telescope, is 25,000 times the resolution of the Hubble Telescope. So it's actually a pretty powerful telescope, but it's still blurred. So how can we see their Event Horizon if it's not giving off light? Well, there's the accretion disk around the black hole. And so I'm going to quickly give you the anatomy of a black hole. So, as many of you know, a black hole tends to pull in material. The material tends to spiral in, just like star formation or solar systems. And as it gets tighter, closer and closer, it gets much hotter because it's being squeezed together and pushed, pulled into the black hole. I like to liken this to it. Really, it's actually quite interesting what goes on the surface here. There's a lot of interesting stuff, but to me, this is like the sun, but it's a flat disk. So it's literally like the sun, and it has similar effects, like this, the chromosphere from this system. And you get very high energy particles from here, and there's this twisting due to the magnetic field, because this is all ionized gas, so it generates a magnetic field. And then here on the outer edge is a dust cloud that is slowly being sucked in. It's like a torus. And then outside that is the rest of the galaxy that it's in. So I'm just sort of contrasting this with M87. So I rotated this picture to represent the jet shooting out of here. And then this representing what we see, the shadow of the core. Okay, so this is becoming one of my favorite objects, Sagittarius A, mainly because it's so complex. So here's the actual galaxy itself, and then you can see the dust and the interstellar medium is on the outside. And so in the core is a black hole, and these jets are shooting out here, and then slamming into interstellar medium or gas. And what happens then is this is very high energetic, and it shows up in the ultraviolet, the X-rays, and this shows up in radio waves because it's gas excitations. And so, and then you have infrared because of the dust cloud, and if you're lucky and looking at the right angle, you actually see the light come from there. So this is just showing all the different things that you would see with different instruments. So by using infrared telescopes, radio telescopes, optical telescopes, X-ray telescopes, you can do a lot of studying about the anatomy of this thing and try to verify that little model that I gave you. It's actually just a story because you've never actually been there. So, and it just turns out that M87 happens to be the right distance, the right size, and the right angle for the Event Horizon Telescope. They've also imaged, of course, the core of our galaxy, the black hole, but that one's more complicated because this has a lot more dynamics to it. So this is a diagram just showing, sort of giving you a bit more about the anatomy. So you have the event horizon here, but you also have this, what's called a point of no return. So any light that crosses this line basically is going in. Okay, so it can't return. So actually the light is that's about where the shadow would be. That's where you would see it coming from. Okay, and over here was, I don't know if I can trigger it again. It's just a simulation. Even the light comes from behind and is bent. Okay, so imagine that if you had Saturn and was at a slight angle, but you could see the back of the ring behind it. If Saturn was as massive as a black hole, the light from the ring would be bent around top and bottom, and you would just see this weird shape. And in fact, it's shown in the movie Interstellar. The actual shape, it actually comes from geometric hydrodynamic calculations. So how come this isn't symmetric? There seems to be bright spots and stuff. Well, part of the reason is what I've explained, but there's other parts. The accretion disk is rotating. So the first part, these bright spots here are due to what's known as Doppler beaming. So as stuff comes towards us, it's actually relativistically boosted and brighter. As it goes away, it's boosted away and you can't see it. That's why you only see one jet coming out of M87. But there's actually two jets, so you can only see one side of it. It's kind of like a lighthouse. This is the best analogy I can give, but you have to make it a relativistic lighthouse. Then it's spinning, so all of a sudden, instead of this, it kind of bulges out, and there's your photon sphere. So I'm just showing this because you can see the complexity that's in here, but in many ways, if you look at this long enough, you can sort of get an idea of what's going on. And then the other thing we have to look at is the black hole could be in retrograde motion with respect to the disk, or not spinning, or prograde motion. And all of those affect what you see. And this is what I was mentioning earlier. So if you imagine this is a disk like Saturn's rings, and I place it over a black hole, just slide it down, then you'll see this. This is from behind the disk, and you get this weird image. And this is from the movie Interstellar. And this is actually a calculation that was done. So when the disk spins like this, and if this part is coming to you, you get an intense brightness or Doppler beaming, and the other side you don't. So this is sort of a crude representation of that. And so here's all the possibilities. So this arrow represents the direction of spin. So the black hole could be spinning this way or the opposite way, and it's all with respect to the jet that we see. Okay, and the simulations will show you that you'll get these types of situations. And it turns out that this is the one that it turns out to be. So basically, if we're looking at the jet like this, the black hole is rotating that way as well as the accretion disk. Okay. So when they had the Event Horizon Telescope announcement, about I guess about a month or two later, this nice infographic showed up online, and it sort of summarizes what I just showed you. So you could see the event horizon, the photon ring, and then so they do a lot of computer modeling and simulations, and then they see if that matches what they see. And that's how they determine the characteristics of it. So I thought that might be of interest because there were quite a few people asking questions after. So I did try to wrap my head around it a bit more, but there's still a little more details. So maybe that's it.
Late. My fault. Okay, so we'll reconvene at about 9:15 with Gord's presentation. So, all right, we'll continue on with the main presentation. Gordon Tulloch will explain about building a backyard observatory. I was looking forward to this because it's going to help me out with my friend Lee. So, Gordon, take it away.
Okay, thanks. Is this working? Yes? I hear the voice of Gordon. Where's my books?
Back here, we're reading them.
Oh, okay, bring them back. I will be referring to them. God, you can't do anything like them.
Sylvia gave them to us.
Ah. Okay, I need to turn this on.
Left side.
Up or down?
Down.
Snap? Was that bad? The right one? Oh, wrong side. Oh, okay, you see? Thank you. There we go. Okay, good. So, hi, it's me again. When we talked about a presentation, I just got this book. This book is, I think, fairly new. It's from the Royal Astronomical Society. When I renewed my membership last time, I noticed that they now had published this book. This book is called Building a Small Observatory, Lessons from Builders. As a matter of fact, if I hit the right button, there it is. So this is a really good book. And it's a sampling of observatories, as it says, 140 small observatories in 10 countries, and how they built it. And what's really cool about observatories that amateurs build is that they really vary. They run the gamut of different types and different, all sorts of creative ways to put a building together. It's amazing what people can do with just a few basic themes. So what I wanted to do tonight is show you the few basic themes and show you a few things that people have done for the various types of observatories, and then show you how I built mine, and then maybe share some of the pitfalls that people run into, that I've run into, and then we can ask around. I think there's a few people in the room here who have their own observatories. So I would definitely suggest, if you're interested, pick up this book. It's a mere $17.95, so it's decent. It's not one of these $40 books, and you can enjoy that. When I was a kid, I think I kept this book, not this copy, but this book in circulation in Monroe Library for about 20 years, because I kept taking it out. Probably the only one who took it out. This is a book by Patrick Moore called Astronomical Telescopes and Observatories for Amateurs, and it was kind of the one book that had all of the stuff that really, I really enjoyed, like telescopes and observatories, and I would read this book and I'd dream about my own observatory that I'd have one day. It's a little dated now, but it's still pretty good. It talks about telescope types that you don't see that much anymore, but certainly it's still topical. I'll talk about that one later. So this is a good book. Get it, read it, enjoy it. So why would you have an observatory? Well, the reason I have an observatory is if I had to lug all my stuff out into the backyard, I wouldn't do it very often. We have a very busy life with a couple of teenagers, and the fact that I can walk out into my shed and 5 minutes later I'm doing what I want to do means that I actually do it. If I had to lug all my stuff out into the backyard every single time and put it back, it would be a lot harder to motivate myself to actually do it. And I'd probably end sooner because I'd have that long process of getting everything packed up. So basically right now I walk out to my shed, I open it up, I can start doing my thing. When I feel like stopping, I close it up and I go back inside. Very easy. It means that you'll actually do it more. I don't risk breaking my equipment and, you know, breaking my cables and all that stuff, plugging it, not plugging it. As you can see from the kind of rat's nest I've got around the telescope there, there's a lot of stuff to plug in my setup. So if I had to tear it down and put it back up every time, things would get busted. Having power right there is wonderful. Having a network setup that works every single time is wonderful. Actually, doing alignments, especially polar alignments, and never having to touch them again is truly wonderful. And it just means that you're up and running right away, right? And of course, I got a place to store my stuff that isn't getting in the way. So should I be not walking around there? Probably, right? So that's why you have an observatory of your very own. So, of course, there's observatories and there's varying degrees of observatories. So we'll start at the absolute simplest and go from there. So one thing that people do is they just leave their stuff out, they cover it up, and you know, it's set up all the time. They walk up to it, they uncover it, use it, and cover it up again, and you're done. This is generally people who live in Arizona or somewhere, right? Because they can't. You can in Manitoba in the summer kind of thing, or in the spring or in the fall. So there are ways to get a sort of semi-permanent setup also by building a little enclosure around your scope so that it's a sort of mini observatory. It protects it, keeps people out of it, keeps the critters out of it, and it's ready to use at any time. There are some commercial systems that you can buy that you can cover your scope with. This is a Biffy tent from Walmart, which works really well. So it's a privacy tent for, you know, if you've got a chemical toilet or something. So that seems to have worked very well for this guy. Keeps the rain off. So the cover is potentially the first thing. Some people have used just fixed sheds, garden sheds, and they put their stuff in there, and when they want to observe, they take it out. Nice thing is that it's outside, so you don't have to lug it down the stairs and all over your garden. Plus, you have a place to store your stuff. On the flip side, it doesn't give you any protection. It'll give you some protection from the elements because you can sit in there while your telescope's doing stuff. But it's generally not something you can see the stars from and still give you some protection. So you still have to wheel out and assemble your stuff. Harder to critter-proof and weatherproof, but hey, better than nothing. And it gets you up under the stars quicker. The next thing is a roll-off shed, and when you start thinking about like the Club Dobsonian, for example, this or the next slide is something that you might want to consider, because what this is you have a stationary telescope. For example, this one's on a pier. It's an SCT on a pier, right? So it's not going anywhere. It's bolted to the concrete. And the actual shed slides off and slides backwards and gets out of the way. So now you have the full sky visible to you at all times. You have no protection from the weather unless you go sit in your shed, but it's a great way to leave your telescope completely set up. It's easier to critter-proof. You get some weather protection when you're not using the telescope, obviously. The problems are, if you're doing this in Manitoba, you have to figure out a way to keep those rails free of ice and snow, which is usually a terminal problem for these kind of things, unless you put some sort of electric warmers on them to keep them free of ice and snow. But there are other alternatives. This fella in Montreal has a fold-off shed, which he stores his telescope on the pad right here. I couldn't find a picture where he had his telescope on it. And this just flips up, right? So there's no rails, and as you can see, it's fine in the snow. You have to get to it. But once you get to it, You just maybe shovel a little bit in the back, you can flip it up, and you can use the telescope, and when you're done, you can flip it down. And pretty critter-proof, pretty easy to secure. Just put a big padlock on it, padlock it to the cement, and you're done. So, once again, now your telescope's outside, 5 minutes and you're up and running and observing. Much better. So the next level of complexity is roll-off or run-off sheds, which is what I have. This is mine in the pictures. And basically, it's a permanently sited shed or building where the roof basically retracts. And in this particular variant, the roof is on rails. So in mine, of course, this is pointing south. This gable here is pointing south. So I wanted to be able to see my southern horizon. So this gable folds down and sits on a pin, and the entire roof rolls back. And now I have a 10 by 10 area where I can have my equipment and use my telescope. I tend to roll the roof off and go inside because it's all automated, but absolutely it's great for sitting outside. You get a thermocell, which we talked about on the list not too long ago, which is a mosquito killing device. I put my thermocell right there 15 minutes before I start observing, and I don't see a mosquito the entire time I'm observing. So it's great. So we're going to look at this in detail, but we'll cover a few other types of sheds. Nice thing about this is you get a full sky exposure. It's not expensive to build. It's not complex. It's easy to take care of. You've got lots of room. On the con side, really, you don't have a lot of wind protection because if your walls are low enough to get the entire horizon, then it's probably not low enough to protect you from the wind all that much. It is a larger footprint than some because you have the building size, in my case 10 by 10, and then you have the runoffs, which are another 10 by 10, so you double the size of the footprint of the building. But you can tell your wife that these are plant hangers.
Indeed they
And it
are.
goes good. And worst case, if you stop using it, it's now a garden shed for your lawnmower. Some other interesting and innovative things. This is a folding roof observatory, but the roof actually opens like this, right? So these are concrete counterweights. So he lifts this hatch out. He folds down his gables, kind of like mine, and then he releases a latch that holds the side of the roof together, and it just opens like a flower. And he's up and running. Very cool. That's in New England. So obviously counterweighting is required, and that's what you'll see in a lot of these kind of, there's sheds, and again you'll see dozens and dozens of different variants of this where the roof may slide off forward on rails or whatever, but this is a very popular type of shed as well. Now this one is, talking about opening like a flower, this one opens even more. So you've got a runoff roof, so the roof rolls off, and because this is a daub, or a split ring, kind of hard to see, but it's low, right, like a Dobsonian, you need to have the walls go away so that you can see over the walls, or you're basically looking at it, close to the zenith. You only have about a 45-degree angle centered on the zenith. So in this one, the front wall folds down, and these two walls fold out to 45 degrees, which gives them a pretty wide field of view for this low-slung telescope. This would be a great one for a large Dobsonian, or a split ring, which is kind of low to the ground. And of course, domes. This one would probably look familiar to you. So there's a bajillion types of domes, and a lot of commercial domes. Domes are hard to make. Not that, it's not prohibitively hard. Lots of people have made their own dome. It's easier to buy one. They tend to be a little more expensive that way. There are some inexpensive options. The thing I don't like about domes is I don't like looking at the world through a slit. I like to see the entire sky. And it's a little more difficult to automate, and I definitely want to have my roof able to run on and off all by itself. So, but this is a very common option. Yep.
Can you see the whole sky from inside your house?
Sorry?
Can you see the whole sky from inside your house?
When the roof is rolled off.
You roll a roof off your house when you're inside controlling your scope in the backyard?
Oh, well, that's different. When I'm not sitting there taking pictures, I like to see the entire sky.
Just wanted to clear that up.
Smart ass. Oh, does it pick that up? I have to get you back. Okay. So, again, domes, very popular. If you're building your own, which is kind of the theme here, a little more difficult. Now, people have done all sorts of stuff, right? So there's rotating roofs and all sorts of stuff like that, which is a lot easier to build because you're building straight angles. You're not trying to build an actual curved dome. So there's lots of this kind of stuff that people have built as well. And then there's all sorts of variants in between. In this case, this is a runoff roof that happens to be on a roof, right? So this fella has built in his garage. He's got a pier running up from the pad. He's got a staircase. He's got all sorts of stuff. Half his garage is servicing this observatory, but it's up on his roof. It is over his garage, and that eliminates one of the big problems with these kind of things, that if you put an observatory over a house, well, heat rises. So if you heat your house, then that heat is going to rise, and you're going to get a lot of issues with distortions introduced by heat rising from your house. So this is over a garage, so it's not nearly as big an issue. And of course, vibrations, if your pier is on a pad where there's people walking around, you're going to get vibrations as well, especially if you're doing high magnification stuff or imaging. So, my shed is called the Snowy Plains Astronomical Observatory for good reason. Because it generally looks like this by January if I don't shovel it out fairly often. So, how did I build it? Well, after securing spousal approval, we discovered that a part of my back garden was actually a really, really good location, because this, at the time, was farmer's field to the border with the U.S. Like, it was nothing, or beyond this, which was good. Unfortunately, a while back, they built Sage Creek there, so it's no longer quite as nice. But, and this tree is gone. It had a very limited lifespan after I took this picture. So first thing to do is figure out where you want it to be, keeping track of where your property line is. This fence is actually on my property, so I knew I was good if I was on that fence line. The neighbor later built a fence that was a foot and a half back, so I've got some space. So we mapped out the property. This is north. So I knew that my roof needed to run off north, because I actually very seldom run my roof all the way off unless I'm looking at Polaris or I'm looking at something that's very north, right? In a lot of cases, the roof is only kind of half off because I'm looking south. So what I did is I bought a shed kit from Revy, a 10 by 10 shed. It was about, the shed itself was under $1,000, but all the rest of the pieces. This thing probably cost me $1,200, front to back. I had a very good exposure, like my house is about here, and the neighbor's house is way over here, so I had a very good southern exposure, east, west, southeast, southwest. And I had some room in my yard, and I had spousal approval. Good to go. So I dug a hole. So the telescope I was going to put, I was actually engaged in building a 16-inch telescope on a horseshoe mount when I decided I was going to go for this shed. which didn't eventually end up getting built because of kids. Got busy. But to support that telescope, I actually poured a pad. And this pad was actually, I created a mound of gravel, put some rebar in there, and so the inside of this pad is actually a dome sort of shape. It hasn't really moved in 15 years, which is kind of nice. Now, if you wanted to put a pier in the ground, you have to be careful. If you're putting a pier in the ground, you need to go below the frost line, which I think is 4 feet in Winnipeg. And you need to make sure that you're not using, a lot of people put sonotube down the hole and they pour concrete into the sonotube, which is really bad. What you want to do is you want to dig the hole and pour the concrete into the raw hole so it fills in all those gaps. So there's a lot more force required to jack it out of the ground, which is what the frost does to piers. So in my case, it wasn't an issue. I just poured a pad. You see all the concrete here. Concrete plus machine plus water equals a pad. So the shed arrived and promptly got thrown into my garage. The shed arrives as pre-built trusses here and all the other fixings. So first thing to do is to build a platform, a deck basically. If you can build a deck, you can build an observatory, right? So once I built the deck, we also trenched in some conduit, some PVC pipe for conduit, so we could run network and power to it, and built the shed. I happened to put the telescope in the shed because it would have been very difficult to get the telescope into the shed any other way. So we built the shed, we built the trusses, we attached it all to the base, and then I went around with a circular saw and zip, 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 and cut all the trusses and moved the roof onto the runners in the back. Okay, with the rail and the wheels. I built all that on there after I cut all that off. And you can see here the gable here was cut off and then put aside because that would fold down. And then I trimmed these down a bit so that my roof line was a little lower. So once I did that, I put all the, what was that stuff called, OSB, onto the shed. Here's the gable. Here's the hinges for the gable. So have to be very careful to make sure this all lines up before you finish putting all of this wood on, or else it will not line up. The door, of course, needed to be a small door because it needed to be below this line. And the roof will, of course, slide out over here. On the inside, so I've got, this is garage door rail, and these are 600-pound steel wheels. So they just run along, there's 3 of them, obviously holding the weight of the roof, and they just run along the steel track. And the steel track continues outside. It's one continuous track, sealed at where there's a seam, so when it rains and all the water actually fills up the track, it fills up the track, but it goes outside the shed. So this is the fold-off gable part. It's got a latch here so it doesn't fall off. When it falls down, it's a very bad thing because it tends to rip the hinges off. Not that I would know that. And of course, I've got some safety things here. So this is first light. This is an 8-inch telescope, an 8-inch f10 telescope. So basically, fold this down, roll the roof back, and I'm invisible. So, of course, the prettying up part came later, but that's basically the thing up and running. Later, when I realized that I probably wasn't going to meet my deadline for getting all the telescopes I was building, there was a big, really nice Mars apparition back then that I really wanted to take some pictures of. So eventually I dropped back, punted, put a pier on to the concrete pad. So basically drilled 3 holes in the concrete pad, sunk some threaded rod into it, filled up the holes with concrete, and I put this pier in just a steel pipe. Matter of fact, I think I got it from somebody in RASC. And at the end of the day, I was up and running with this is an 8-inch Celestron telescope. This is a hot box for my computer, so my computer could be in all year. If it was minus 30 out, the computer was generating enough heat to stay functional, and some of the heat would rise into this box to keep the monitor functioning. So this thing actually ran all winter, and it was connected to a USB hub that ran all the bits and pieces and focuser motors and so on that ran the telescope. So this is with the roof open, obviously, and this is what it looks like with the roof closed. And it was great. I spent a lot of time in it, but then finally kids got the better of me. I found I couldn't stay awake past 10 o'clock, for one thing. So it fell into disuse until I finally said, okay, I'm going to take a hiatus here, and I'm going to sell off all my gear, because then when I get back into it, I can buy nicer gear, right? And the lawnmower is going in the shed. So, and the winter tires. There was winter tires. And about 40 squirrels, 18 rabbits, 8 skunks, a bunch of rats, and a groundhog were living in the shed. So, not long ago, and actually it's probably 2018 versus 2019, I decided, okay, kids are older, my kids are teenagers, they don't want to hang out with dad and mom anyway, so I'm going to have a lot more time to spend, so I'm going to reactivate my shed. So, out comes the pine cone collection in a container like this. Had to replace some wood. Obviously, the stain, it needed to be stained and prettied up. But generally, it just needed, a couple of pieces of wood needed to be replaced, but generally it had survived not too bad. And I had to re-level these runners because things had shifted a little bit on these cottage blocks. Got a new EQG mount, got a C8, and basically instead of upgrading, I ended up with pretty much the same thing I had before, except with an EQG instead of a CG5. So a little bit of an upgrade. So the sad observatory became a happy observatory, and here it is as it is today. I really went all out on my my pier. Does anybody know what those are?
Leveling bolts?
Pardon?
Leveling bolts?
This is brakes.
Yeah, no, those are rotors from a Dodge minivan. They are solid. They're heavy. So I welded them to the pier. So that sucker doesn't move. The important thing about this pier, though, is it's isolated from the building. You'll notice I had that pad, and that pad was completely isolated from the building. There was no part of the building touching it. So when I walk around in my shed, the telescope doesn't move, right? It doesn't bounce, which is a downside of some observatories where your telescope is actually touching the building because it transmits vibrations from you walking around and so on. So I can walk around in my shed, no problem. Doesn't cause any vibrations. I can be taking pictures while I'm walking around. Doesn't matter. So this is close enough to my house, the wireless extends out to it with an extender. So I can be sitting in my house running the telescope, or I can be sitting in the shed, depending on what the mosquito situation. Obviously the thermocell helps with that, and how long it's going to take and so on. So this is basically the workflow. I walk out, I put a key in the padlock, I take the padlock off, open the doors, drop or power up the pier, basically plug in one plug and it's all powered up. Drop the cable, roll off the roof, check everything's up and running and going out. Or sit here and use it from a console here. So this is my C8. It's on a Orion Sirius EQG mount, It's got a Canon 1100D as an imager. It's got an off-axis guider with a Orion Starshoot guider. All that plugs into a powered USB hub, and it's all run by a Raspberry Pi 4B, which if you were at my presentation last weekend, you know what that is. If you don't, sorry. It's basically a single board computer that runs all my astronomy software, so I can connect to it with a keyboard and mouse, or I connect to it through a remote desktop type thing. If I happen to be in the observatory, I can use a wireless joypad to actually run the telescope. It has all of the buttons on the joypad are all mapped to different things, so I can change slew speeds. 1 and 2 are my focuser, all that kind of stuff. So, and that's all ECOS, in K-stars and stellar main. Then all that is run from that. So it works really well. I'm really happy with it. It was easy to put together. It was not expensive, obviously, but it works pretty well. So future plans, I do want to run, I'm usually wireless. I do have a conduit run that I can run a cable through, and I'll run a cable through so I can get faster networking. Flip-off covers on the rails because it's keeping them clean in the middle of winter is sometimes an exercise. I also considered you can buy strip that are basically a bunch of resistors. You can buy strip to heat your roof to keep the snow off it. So I was going to embed that underneath the rails. But then I figured, okay, well that uses power, and then I have to turn them off and on and all that sort of thing. So what I'll do is I'm just going to have a couple of spring-loaded covers that when the roof starts rolling back, it's got a wedge, it just pushes them aside and rolls on and rolls on. Pretty easy stuff. I need to replace that heavy, hot roof with something a little lighter because it is very heavy. So if I want to automate it, it means the motor is working a lot harder than it needs to. Plus it gets really hot in that shed. When it's very hot outside, it gets really hot in the shed. And of course, all the equipment heats up, and then it takes a long time to cool down. So I want to keep it as cool as possible, so I want to have something that's not black or dark. Finish the interior, add some weather detectors, so I can, when I actually start it all up and running, walk away, I can just go to bed, and it does its thing, and then it closes itself when it's done, or when it detects the fact there's going to be some adverse weather. So that means I need to automate the roll-off. A lot of people are using these things. These things are the things that, the gates that slide. These are the motors people are using for sliding those gates. Perfectly suited for this application. Garage door openers work too, but this one seems to be the easiest thing to implement, so probably something like that. So that's next year. Any questions? Yo.
You said that you have it automatically open and close. I noticed the scope sticks up, so I guess it would have to somehow come down to close.
That is an interesting engineering problem that I'm still thinking about.
What was the question?
If I'm going to automate the roof rolling back and forth, what do I do about the gable folding up and down? There's probably a very complicated pulley system that would make that happen, or a separate motor. Right? I haven't decided yet. I have relay boards that fit on top of my Pis and Arduinos and all that kind of stuff that can turn motors off and on, so I'm not too worried about it. Whatever will be easier at the time. Or I don't even bother to fold it down, I just leave it. And then I reduce my southern exposure, but Sage Creek is there now, so I'm not really as anxious to get down to the horizon in the south. Yep.
Where did you find a commercial door opener for your gable?
I'm sorry, I'm hard of hearing, so you have to yell.
A commercial door opener for your gable? Maybe from, I don't know, Habitat?
Yep. Yep. The question is, will I bother? I guess. Any other questions? Yeah?
How does your mount work in the middle of winter for tracking?
Well, this one I haven't had out in the middle of winter. The CG5, I actually ripped apart the CG5, re-greased it with lithium, and it would be good to about minus 10 or 15. So yeah, minus 35, nothing works, including me. I don't work under minus 15 either, so it's all actually fairly convenient. The telescope doesn't either. I did try to use it minus 25, and yeah, things did go so far. So at a certain point, we have to bow to the fact we live in an icebox. Any other questions? I'm keeping you here late because you were late coming back. So. Yep.
Do you find you get condensation on your telescope?
Like dew?
Do you outside?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Well, it's not too bad because the whole roof, it's not like being outside, right? Like during the day,
Right, yeah.
it hasn't been a problem during the day, but of course at night you get dew, right? So I used to have dew heaters. I'm actually thinking of making some, but yeah, I'll either buy or make some. It hasn't been a big problem so far, but it's been short bursts of activity with this lately. So, any other? No? So, well, what are some mistakes that people make? The one I see a lot is this kind of thing, where you have to be an acrobatic gnome to actually be able to use your telescope, right? Because I can't fit in there, so I'm not really sure, I guess you could sort of worm your way in there and if you're kind of acrobatic, be able to look through your eyepiece, but a lot of these things are just too small, right? Seriously, with a 10 by 10 shed, it's still sometimes not enough room, especially when you get all your crap in there. So definitely you want to think about not only storing your telescope, but if you're going to have it all fold away so you can use it, you want to make sure you can actually use your telescope. So, as I said, you want to isolate your peer from the pad. So while you're contorting around this telescope, trying to get a look through the eyepiece, you're also bumping it, and it's not a very stable platform that way. Consider what's going to happen in the winter. So if you are planning on using it into the minuses, you want to make sure that your mount is capable of operating. You will use it in colder temperatures because you don't have to drag it out to your backyard, so you will want to use it. You want to make sure it's capable of being used. And like I said, one of the things I did with my CG5 is I completely winterized it. And it worked a lot better. So, be aware of present and future issues with location, like trees that are small when you build it might be big when you're 10 years later. And your wife may not let you cut them down, like you did the first one. So there are some bushes kind of encroaching, but they're covering up Sage Creek, so I'm okay with them. My wife is here, by the way, so she's getting a look into my brain. People have a lot of trouble with zoning, and people have more trouble with like homeowners associations if they live in an area that has a homeowner association that have rules around what they can build. Sometimes they build their observatory and the homeowners association comes and says, take that thing down, that's not appropriate for our area, right? For Winnipeg, if you have something under 108 square feet, you don't have to get a permit. So you might want to make sure that your building's under 108 square feet. Ensure you have enough power to get to the observatory, so you do want to run power. Running an extension cable to your house gets old really quickly, so get an electrician to come and put power in, get a permit. Make security a primary design criteria. So I learned how good my security was when I left my son's welder in the shed, and he simply unscrewed the hinges of the door and took it out when he wanted to get it. So now my doors are quite a bit more secure. So make sure security, you're going to put a lot of stuff in there, it's going to be expensive stuff, make sure security is a primary criteria. I do have an alarm in there, so when the door came off, I got my phone beeped and told me, and I have cameras on it, but yeah, I needed to solve that one security issue. The really cool thing is what I got screws you can only turn one way, right? So you put those suckers in, they're never coming out again, because you can screw them this way, but they don't have the slot in them to screw them the other way, so they go in and they can never come out. So that kind of stuff you have to think about. Critter proofing, I'm still working on. The critters liked their house, and they didn't want to give it up. So it's now a fairly pitched battle that we're fighting. You know, every method of ingress they discover, I close, and they find another one, and I close, because they're like critters, right? It doesn't matter all that much. They don't get into the shed. They get under the shed, is where they like to be. It's going to get to a point where I'm going to live and let live and say, okay, you're not a skunk, you can live under the shed. So, but try to critter proof. Screens are good. What I've got is on the sides of the thing, I've got basically 2x6s buried in the earth down to a certain depth to keep them from digging in and that kind of stuff. So you just have to plan for it. And again, critters are going to be critters, so at a certain point it's good enough. And plan for the future. That 5-inch SCT may be a 24-inch RCT one day, right? So you want to plan for something bigger than you have now. So lots of commercial options. You know, building your backyard observatory, didn't want to go into them too much. How many people here have ponds and things? Quite a few. One? Really? Oh, a couple. Okay. Yeah. And domes and stuff. I know we have some fairly sophisticated astronomical compounds out there.
Don't buy more dome the crap.
So
Don't buy, which one? Explorer Dome.
Explorer Dome? Well, obviously, this is just a sampling. Some of these are from away, but some of them are really cool. The Astrohaven clamshells look expensive, but they're cool. The Astrodome is from Australia, but they're kind of cool. And pulsars look kind of plastic pottage, kind of, except with a more traditional dome. So there are a lot of commercial options. So if you just want to buy a solution and have it installed and up and running quickly, certainly there's tons and tons and tons, including Skyshed's a Canadian company. And they not only do the pods, I think they do the pods, right? But they'll also come and build a nice shed like this for you. Or they'll give you plans and send you a kit. So if you don't quite want to roll your own like I did, this is a good option for you, but you're going to pay for it. So as always, some neat books. This is a great one. It's brand new. It's very, very recent, very topical. This series from the Practical Astronomy series, there's some good stuff in here. This is the worst astronomical observatory book ever made. So, but it's actually a decent book because it's not only how to build an observatory, it's how to build a telescope. It goes right from, you know, it talks about grinding mirrors, it talks about building telescopes, it talks about different, it's really a end-to-end comprehensive look at telescopes, and it happens to have a chapter with observatories in it, right? So it's not, the name is not descriptive, but it is relatively modern. It's got dogs and things in it, much more modern than this one. So for the sort of nostalgia, these two are pretty good. But I would say if you're going to get one to start dreaming about building your own observatory, this would be the one. Questions? Oh, hey, look at that. So if you do build a runoff shed, try not to make it look like an outhouse too much, or someone may leave you a present. No questions? Cool. Ready for pizza? Thank you very much.
All right, now we'll conclude this month's edition of the RASC meeting. Thanks for everyone coming out. It's been great. Just got a text from Darren, who's already out there.